Welcome to my YouTube channel. If you are new to this channel, please subscribe. You will not miss anything when we post something interesting every time. Without further ado, let us jump into today's interesting topic.
Assab Port, also known as Assab Port, is a strategically important coastal city situated in the southern part of the Red Sea, in the Horn of Africa. The history of its ownership is a complex and contentious one, marked by numerous transitions and disputes. Ethiopia's claim to Assab Port has been a subject of historical significance and ongoing debate. Historical ownership of Assab 1. Pre-19th century. Prior to the 19th century, the region around Assab was inhabited by various ethnic groups, including the Afar people. It was not under the direct control of any centralized state or power. The area served as a vital trade link along the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean, attracting the interest of various foreign powers. 2. Italian presence. In the late 19th century, Italy sought to establish a colonial presence in the Horn of Africa. In 1889, Emperor Menelik II of Ethiopia signed the Treaty of Wuchel with Italy, which granted Italy control over key areas, including Assab. The interpretation of this treaty was later disputed, leading to conflicts between the two nations. 3. Italian Eritrea. Assab, along with other coastal areas, became part of Italian Eritrea, an Italian colony, as a result of the treaty. Italy invested in the development of Assab as a port and infrastructure in the early 20th century. Italian control continued until the end of World War II. 4. UN administration. After World War II, the United Nations granted Ethiopia control over Eritrea, including Assab, as a federated state. However, this arrangement was not without controversy, and tensions arose between Eritreans and the Ethiopian government. 5. Eritrean independence. Eritrea's struggle for independence from Ethiopia culminated in 1993 when Eritrea achieved full sovereignty. Assab became part of independent Eritrea following the referendum for independence. Ethiopia's claim to Assab Port revolves around historical, geographic, and strategic considerations. Historical connection. Ethiopia argues that Assab had been part of its territory during Emperor Menelik II's rule in the late 19th century. They point to the Treaty of Wuchel as the basis for their historical claim to Assab and the surrounding areas. Landlocked status. One of the primary drivers of Ethiopia's claim to Assab is its landlocked status. After Eritrea's independence in 1993, Ethiopia lost access to the Red Sea. Assab, as a historically significant port, represents a critical outlet for Ethiopia's trade and economic activity. Geopolitical significance. Assab is strategically located near the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, which controls access to the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. This location gives it immense geopolitical importance in facilitating international trade and maritime transportation. Economic dependency. Ethiopia has voiced concerns over its reliance on the port of Djibouti for its maritime trade, as it is the primary alternative to Assab. Ethiopia's claim to Assab is tied to its desire to reduce economic dependency on a single port and diversify its trade route. Despite Ethiopia's historical claim and its practical needs for access to the Red Sea, the matter of Assab's ownership is complicated by the fact that the Eritrea-Ethiopia Boundary Commission, EEBC, established to resolve the border dispute, awarded Assab and the disputed territories to Eritrea in 2002. However, the implementation of this ruling remains a point of contention and has not been fully realized, resulting in ongoing disputes and tensions between the two countries. Ethiopia's claim to Assab Port. A legal perspective. The ownership and control of Assab Port, a strategically located maritime facility on the Red Sea coast, has been a subject of contention between Ethiopia and Eritrea for decades. This dispute is rooted in historical, geopolitical, and legal factors. In this analysis, we will examine Ethiopia's legal grounds to claim Assab Port, taking into consideration international law, historical context, and relevant agreements. Ethiopia's claim to Assab Port can be traced back to its historical connection to the region. Before Eritrea's independence in 1993, Assab was part of Ethiopia, and the Ethiopian Empire had exercised control over this territory for many years. The historical ties between Ethiopia and Assab provide a foundation for Ethiopia's claim. International law, territorial integrity. One of the fundamental principles of international law is the principle of territorial integrity. This principle, as enshrined in the United Nations Charter, prohibits the use of force to acquire territory. In the case of Assab Port, Ethiopia's claim is based on the argument that Eritrea used force to acquire this territory during its War of Independence in the 1960s and 70s, which violates the principle of territorial integrity. Agreements and treaty. Ethiopia's claim is further supported by international agreements and treaties. For instance, the 1902 Treaty of Asmara, which was signed between Italy, as the colonial power, and Ethiopia, recognized Ethiopia's sovereignty over Assab. While this treaty may have been altered or replaced by subsequent agreements, it still forms part of the historical and legal context of Ethiopia's claim. United Nations decisions. The United Nations has been involved in efforts to resolve the Ethiopia-Eritrea conflict. Various UN Security Council resolutions, such as Resolution 1177, 1998, called for the cessation of hostilities and a peaceful resolution of the conflict, but they did not determine the final status of Assab Port. However, these resolutions emphasize the importance of upholding international law, including the principle of territorial integrity. Post-independence agreements. After Eritrea gained independence in 1993, a key agreement known as the Agreement on Cessation of Hostilities was signed in 2000. This agreement stipulated that a neutral boundary commission would demarcate the border between Ethiopia and Eritrea. While the process was initiated, it remains incomplete due to various disputes, including the status of Assab Port. Ethiopia argues that the demarcation process was not fair and impartial, and therefore, the legal status of Assab Port remains uncertain. Eritrea's counterarguments. Eritrea's counterarguments revolve around its claim to Assab Port based on historical ties to the territory during its struggle for independence and the international recognition of its sovereignty. Conclusion. In conclusion, Ethiopia's legal claim to Assab Port is based on historical ties, international agreements, and principles of international law, particularly the principle of territorial integrity. The unresolved nature of the Ethiopia-Eritrea border dispute and the lack of a clear determination on the status of Assab Port by international bodies make this issue complex and contentious. Ultimately, the resolution of this dispute may require diplomatic negotiations, adherence to international law, and the involvement of impartial mediators to reach a mutually acceptable solution that respects the interests and rights of both Ethiopia and Eritrea.
Thank you for joining us on this exciting journey. We hope you enjoyed today's content as much as we enjoyed creating it. If you found this video informative, entertaining, or just plain awesome, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, like, share it with your friends, and hit that subscribe button. By doing so, you're not only helping our channel grow, but you'll also stay updated with all the amazing content we have in store for you. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to see you in the next video. Until then, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep exploring. Thank you, and see you soon.